The 2025 sci-fi masterpiece Love, Death and Robots Season 4 has finally launched. During World War II, an elite American Air Force squad received a mission. The higher-ups ordered them to pilot the Liberty Lady, crossing the English Channel. Their target was to bomb a church located south of the German border. The command believed that a single bomber was most likely to evade enemy detection, so there would be no support for the crew. They were assigned an eccentric officer named Combs. Combs tightly clutched a compass in his hand. His eyes glowed with an eerie red hue. The spherical gunner, with a face full of freckles, was a devout Christian. He truly didn't want to bomb a church and desecrate God. Being afraid wasn't a shameful thing. Everyone was somewhat apprehensive about the mission, but Chick wasn't afraid of anything. He was a staunch atheist. He only believed in what could be seen and touched. God and demons simply didn't exist. The Liberty Lady set off amidst a barrage of gunfire. Just after they took off, the left wing was hit by anti-aircraft fire. Fortunately, the aircraft of World War II were quite sturdy. The crew steadily approached their destination. Meanwhile, inside the church, a Nazi bishop was conducting a dark ritual. He had captured priests from various places, hanging upside down over the altar, and was preparing to summon some dark entity.
Hold the fucking bombs!
Combs stared at the compass in his hand, waiting for the right moment. On the other side, the priest's blood flowed into the ground. The bishop's hoarse voice echoed throughout the church. The statues at the corners of the altar cracked one by one. As the plane was about to give in, the compass finally aligned with the center. Combs hurriedly shouted, "Drop the bombs! Hurry!" A line of bombs labeled to Dear Adolf fell toward the church. The bishop's sneering laughter was interrupted by the explosions. Just as the crew thought they had succeeded, a black hand crawled out from the ruins. Combs's compass also trembled inexplicably. At this moment, several Nazi enemy planes approached. The crew quickly set up the cannons to attack. However, the enemy's firepower was fierce. The Liberty Lady took the opportunity to dive into the clouds. The enemy planes behind suddenly emitted red lights. Chick guessed that they must have had a collision at this moment. Tup and John suddenly spurted out nosebleeds. Immediately after, an unknown creature approached the Liberty Lady. Two sharp claws pierced into the fuselage. "What the hell is this thing?" Combs hurriedly explained. "It's a fallen angel." As soon as he finished speaking, team member Bill was torn apart by it. John huddled in the spherical turret, praying continuously. However, his prayers only served to enrage the fallen angel. Combs was about to step forward to stop it, when an arm pierced through him. The upper body of the fallen angel slowly penetrated the cockpit. Bash quickly fired his gun, but in the blink of an eye, he was ripped in half by the monster. The gunner pulled out his weapon, and began firing at the fallen angel. But the creature's skin sprouted countless small mouths that chewed the bullets into pieces. John was caught off guard, and was seized by the fallen angel by his ankle. He gripped the cross in his hand and swung it at the creature. It indeed caused some damage, but this action also completely enraged the fallen angel. John, now in pieces, fell beside the cross. Tap stepped forward to pick up the pendant. At this moment, the fallen angel was still wreaking havoc in the cockpit. The Liberty Lady swayed in the air. One crew member after another was brutally slaughtered. Each death was extremely gruesome. The fallen angel howled fiercely, shattering glass and dials. The entire crew was in imminent danger. The pilot did his utmost to stabilize the aircraft. However, several giant hands reached into the cockpit. A comrade rushed over to help. Unexpectedly, a giant hand swatted his weapon away and crushed his skull. Tap's scream brought Chick back to his senses. He quickly pulled out a dagger to help Tap remove the turret, aiming the gun at the fallen angel. But this bizarre creature was virtually indestructible. It crawled on all fours toward Tap, overpowering him. In a critical moment, Tap threw the cross and used the dagger to pin it to the face of the fallen angel. Chick fired at the cross on the monster's face without hesitation. This move proved to be immensely powerful. The monster let out a scream from the wound. A multitude of arms of various shapes and colors surged out, surrounding the entire fuselage. Fortunately, the main body of the fallen angel had already been blown apart. The pilot ultimately stabilized the plane and returned to their homeland, with the last two surviving crew members. It was from this moment that Chick picked up his faith. This episode was outstanding in both its cinematography and artwork. It also illustrated that humans should hold a sense of reverence for the unknown. Then the second story began. This story is titled Close Encounters with Microorganisms. In the vast desert, A police car rushed to an alien spacecraft. Several officers gathered to discuss. As soon as they finished speaking, the door of the spacecraft opened. 3 aliens slowly walked out. The leader of the aliens explained that they came in peace. The officers immediately shot the 3 aliens. However, one of them wasn't completely dead and got up to escape. The police immediately chased after him to finish him off. Unexpectedly, this little guy managed to kill several officers. The last officer finally caught him, but was also shot by the alien. Meanwhile, the spacecraft parked to the side kept flashing, sending signals to the universe. A large number of UFOs, receiving the message, began to approach Earth en masse. At this moment, a farmer intended to do something inappropriate with his cow. Unexpectedly, just as he was about to act, he was sucked into a UFO. However, this was only the beginning of the alien invasion. The next day, they began to capture humans on a large scale. Like vacuum cleaners, they sucked people off the streets, they transformed them into alien warriors, and deployed them on the streets to hunt down humans. Even the Statue of Liberty was toppled by these extraterrestrial invaders. In the end, soldiers from the Veterans Association were the first to strike back. Under their leadership, people across the land began to resist. The tide of battle turned in an instant. The aliens had to deploy more powerful weapons to deal with the United States military. Their technology was decades ahead of humanity, turning Earth into a lunar surface. The ground was filled with craters everywhere. Even the statue of Jesus was sucked up into the spaceship. However, humans are intelligent beings. They quickly adjusted their strategy to lure the massive high-tech alien weapons into a trap. Thus, they took down the first giant enemy. Humans dismantled the parts and reassembled them. They counterattacked the UFOs in the sky, and then gathered parts to continue processing. Slowly, humans created a giant cannon and fired a shot into the sky. Unexpectedly, this weapon combination was too powerful. It not only absorbed Earth but also devoured nearby asteroids. In the end, a large hole appeared in the galaxy. Isn't that what war is all about? The new story Spider Rose then unfolds in the vast debris of the universe. A woman named Lydia dreams of returning to a disaster from 8 years ago. She lost her lover and friends during that mission. Sharp pain gnawed at her brain. Lydia quickly injected herself with a dose of medication. At this moment, an alien sent a communication. He introduced that Lydia's husband had extensive business dealings with him when managing the Mechanist colony on Kronos. Unfortunately, the Shapers later took over that colony. Lydia bluntly stated that the Shapers' betrayal led to the deaths of hundreds. She didn't consider such actions to be takeover. Lydia didn't want to discuss this any further. Recently, she discovered that millions of years ago, a ring-shaped ice body mixed with strange substances was struck by numerous ion particles. Overheated metallic carbon fused in a static state, resulting in a unique composition. The alien was indeed very interested. Upon hearing this, he offered 250,000 gigawatts, plus a stable plasma lattice for storage. But Lydia didn't care about these things. She only wanted a weapon powerful enough to destroy an orbital station colony. However, weapons trading was strictly prohibited on the alien's planet. At this moment, he noticed that there were many interstellar butterflies around Lydia, so he immediately thought of a compromise. He could use a nosy for profit in exchange. This wasn't an ordinary interstellar pet. The alien suggested, "I can send the nosy to you first. After 96 standard days, you can decide whether to accept this deal." This proposal posed no harm to Lydia, so she accepted the alien's offer. The nosy was quickly delivered to Lydia. She immediately analyzed the genetic chain of this creature and found that the nosy ate everything and had a vast amount of genetic material, far beyond its own needs. Moreover, it could imitate its owner and change its form. The nosy was a very curious little creature. One day, it stole a few butterflies and inexplicably formed a cocoon. When it emerged again, it possessed some characteristics of a butterfly. Lydia enjoyed her time with the nosy very much. She was actually a very lonely person who needed companionship. At this moment, the base suddenly sounded an alarm. The system indicated that a Shaper was approaching. The person was none other than Lydia's archenemy, Jed, who was the one who killed her husband previously. Lydia had killed Jed a total of 11 times, but each time it was only a clone. This time, the original had finally arrived. A great battle was about to erupt. Jed seized the opportunity to destroy the opponent's reactor. Lydia quickly launched a specially designed gas bomb. After inhaling it, Jed's skin began to rot. The ship he piloted crashed into the web-like base. Jed was forced to leave the ship and infiltrate the base, in search of Lydia. Unexpectedly, as soon as he entered, he was ambushed. The two fought fiercely with all their strength. Jed quickly gained the upper hand and pinned Lydia down. In a critical moment, the nosy jumped in to bite him. Lydia seized the opportunity and successfully counter-killed. She activated the last gas bomb, completely ending Jed's original body. The base was rendered inoperable due to the damaged shield. Lydia quickly hugged the nosy and hid inside an old spaceship. But the atmosphere inside could only last a week at most. The nosy didn't understand why its owner was so sad, and could only nuzzle her with its fluffy head. However, soon hunger consumed all of the nosy's thoughts. It bit Lydia's finger. The latter had avenged herself, and didn't care about being eaten by her pet. Soon, the aliens came to take the nosy one unexpectedly. It had gained some of Lydia's characteristics after eating her. The next story is titled 400 Boys. In a future world, a group of giant infants invaded Earth. The streets by the river were engulfed in flames. The giants danced in the fire. They uprooted bridges and hurled them at the moon. The terrifying power filled all humans with dread. A surviving 5-member team hid in a building to discuss strategies. Unexpectedly, the roof was completely ripped off by a giant infant. They crawled out of the rubble and back onto the street, then realized that the surroundings were filled with ruins. The entire 88 block had fallen. They passed through the territories of the Kars Gang, Silk Gang, and Angel Gang. They didn't see a single survivor. Just as they were in despair, they saw the Iceman Gambler from the Longsu help. The 5-member group was originally from rival gangs, but now they had a common enemy to face, so they chose to bury the hatchet. Gambler's companions had all died at the hands of the giant infants. Those giant infants completely took over the 400 block, so they were all called the 400 Boys. Gambler suggested they first seek out the Rakshasa Gang. The 6 of them crossed several nearby blocks, and arrived at the 380 block where the Rakshasa Gang was stationed. A girl named Bara quickly appeared. The leader of the 5-member group, Scar, stated, "We're here to negotiate and unite several gangs, to jointly fight against the 400 Boys." Bara explained that the grandmother had decided the course of action for the Rakshasa Gang. "I can take you to see her." At this moment, the grandmother sat solemnly in the ruins, performing divination.
On fire made out of cities, bombs going off like fireworks. The world was broken.
The grandmother predicted that outside beings would seep through the cracks. They were about to unleash a massacre. Ultimately, the Rakshasa Gang joined the battle, officially confronting the 400 Boys.
It's our turn! You killed our friends! That's our lives! You raped us!
In response to Gambler's provocation, the giant infants quickly appeared. They roared, instantly whipping up a storm. The chains in their hands split entire buildings apart. The street youths converted their brainwaves into energy. Bright blue beams dissolved the bodies of the giant infants. But everyone's energy was quickly depleted. The giant infants instantly recovered. Scar raised his arm and shouted, leading everyone forward. Bara was the first to chop off a giant infant's thick calf. Others fought desperately in resistance. At this moment, a giant infant kicked the team member Toad away. He smashed onto a car, shattering into pieces. The crybaby gathered himself, moved debris, and rescued the trapped Scar. The two worked together to trip the giant infant in front of them, and stabbed it to death with a broken stake. At the same time, Bara also cleaved open the skull of one infant Gambler, determined to avenge his brother, gripped his razor and charged at the giant infant, slashing open the enemy's knee. However, the next second, Gambler was captured by the opponent. The giant infant gently squeezed, crushing him to death. Bara rushed over to sever its arm. The last enemy fell to the ground, unable to rise.
God. Oh boy. You're dead, Slicker.
The next new segment is titled The Other Large Thing. You might be somewhat familiar with it, because its director also created the popular short 3 robots from Season 3. It inherited the previous cute and silly style. The main character was a quirky cat named Sanchez. He had been planning a grand scheme to rule the world, but he had to rely on bipeds for food. One day, Sanchez's owner, Todd, returned home late at night.
Just where have you two beef-witted fart generators been? I tell you, my enfeebled chuckle monkey.
When the little cat meows, it's likely scolding you for not feeding him on time. However, the owner's attention was entirely on the housekeeping robot they had just bought. With this electronic nanny, they no longer had to do any household chores, whether it's cleaning or cooking. Everything was handled by the housekeeping robot. The couple completely treated it like a slave. This robot was very smart. It quickly learned the language of cats. Moreover, users allowed the little robot to control anything connected to the internet, including doors, locks, and appliances. Upon hearing this, the cat directed the robot to sweep past the dry cat food. It fed itself the tuna cans from the top of the cupboard. Sanchez's belly grew round from eating. The little robot remarked that if you liked it, you could continue ordering online. My user agreement allows me to use Todd's credit card. Sanchez became increasingly satisfied with this new servant. He even gave it a new name, Thumb Messenger, because the little robot, like its owner, had fingers on its paws. In the spirit of reciprocity, Thumb Messenger also wanted to call the cat Sanchez, but the latter replied that it was just a code name, his true name wasn't for humans to know.
Not since that terrible day at what is called the Fete.
Sanchez stated that if you performed well enough, you would one day be worthy of knowing my name. Now he was very curious if Thumb Messenger could control electricity in other areas. This was no problem for the robot. It quickly hacked into the network, gaining control of the power grid and other critical systems. Sanchez devised a plan in his mind. He instructed Thumb Messenger to disguise everything as normal, so that Todd wouldn't notice anything unusual. However, Todd would eventually discover the tuna cans and the credit card situation, so Thumb Messenger, before being exposed, ordered housekeeping robots for every cat in the apartment, as instructed by Sanchez. He also included a can of tuna to increase the appeal. Next, the two would teach the cats how to ally with their robot to fight against the oppressive humans. That night, all the cats and robots in the apartment united to spark a true revolution. They remotely controlled the stove to shoot flames and locked the doors. Then they set off towards the entire city. The next story is quite special within the series. The production team is very hardcore. It's also the only episode featuring live action, titled Golgatha. In the future, the aquatic alien race known as the Lupo people arrived on Earth and contacted the United Nations. They requested to speak with a particular priest. Why must this specific priest be chosen? Because recently, a dolphin that was resurrected due to an oil spill appeared on Earth. It was believed to be an incarnation of God, and this priest was the witness to the resurrection of God. The priest followed the bishop to the beach. A crowd of protesters had gathered here.
God, it's not a face! The aliens!
The leader of the military informed the priest, the Lupo people lived on a gas giant 50 light years away from us. Humans knew nothing about their military capabilities. However, based on the Luparian warships, it could be deduced that their power was formidable. Therefore, the purpose of this conversation for the priest was to strive for peace, and absolutely avoided provoking war. Soon, a loud noise echoed through the sky. The Luparian envoy descended onto the beach. The dark green spherical apparatus opened up. A Cthulhu-like octopus crawled out from within. It was adorned with strange land armor.
Greetings. Please accompany me.
Through the dialogue between one person and the octopus, it became clear that these aquatic aliens all practiced Christianity. They indeed worshipped the resurrected dolphin as God. The Luparian envoy had come to convey God's message. The dolphin appeared on the surface of the sea. The envoy immediately forced the priest to kneel before the Savior. After the little dolphin called out a few times, the envoy explained that the Savior had delivered the gospel. She witnessed the insane slaughter of aquatic life by terrestrial beings. Thus, she commanded the Lupo people to take revenge for the ocean against humanity. No sooner had she spoken than the alien warships arrived. Humanity was about to face a catastrophic disaster. This episode is essentially a large marine conservation propaganda piece. The place where Jesus was crucified is Golgatha. Thus, Golgatha represents God being harmed by humanity. It also symbolizes God atoning for humanity's sins. And the dolphin in the film died because of the world's sins. However, this time, God didn't intend to atone for humanity. The next episode has a strange title, The Roar of the Tyrannosaurus. The short film focuses on the frozen skies of Jupiter. Once unreachable space has now become a dazzling paradise for Earth's inhabitants. Today, Lord Sharon of Europa and Duchess Salaka of Callisto would become a pair of lovers. However, their love must endure the trials of rituals and ceremonies. As soon as he finished speaking, a group of knights appeared on the battlefield. Each of them had undergone years of rigorous training. Among them was a Chinese woman.
我的福音标志着我的狂野不驯。
She bore a mysterious snow wolf totem. The 6 knights were poised and ready. They mounted their fierce triceratops and began to fight each other. It turned out that the trial facing this marriage was to see the knights kill each other. The 6 knights fought fiercely with their opponents for a chance to survive. At this moment, the Asian woman's mount was blinded by the braided man. The triceratops struggled in pain, throwing her to the ground. A black female knight rushed over to entangle the braided man. However, the Asian woman didn't die from the fall. She retracted her rope and returned to the battlefield. Then she wrapped around the front leg of a mount, dragging the entire triceratops down. The black female knight took the opportunity to kick away the braided man. She watched him get crushed by the massive triceratops. Now only 2 knights remained. Even though the two had previously fought together, they now had to fight to the death. Their strengths were evenly matched, but the black female knight was more agile. She rolled over the beast's horns and landed on the ground. The Asian woman also held the mount's mouth and paused in place. The nobles cheered for this spectacular duel. The host proclaimed that this contest was worthy of celebrating the celestial union. But we have an even more exciting segment to come, the host said. As soon as the host finished speaking, a Tyrannosaurus Rex burst into the arena. It immediately swallowed the black female knight whole. The furious Asian woman commanded her Triceratops to charge forward. The two massive prehistoric dinosaurs clashed repeatedly. The Asian woman tightened the wire in her hand, driving the beast's horn into the T-Rex's body. However, the next second, she was slammed to the ground by the T-Rex. The Triceratops was also torn away from a patch of skin, groaning as it fell to the ground. However, these nobles had no intention of letting the Tyrannosaurus go. Several disc-shaped devices penetrated its skin and extracted the T-Rex's blood, then offered it to the soon-to-be-wed couple. They sipped the T-Rex's blood, reveling in the victory of the duel. Unexpectedly, the Asian woman seized the opportunity to leap onto the T-Rex's back. She commanded it to leap up toward the elevated viewing platform. Duchess Salaka was bitten to death on the spot. Lord Sharon desperately clung to the platform. However, before the Asian woman fell, she shot out a rope, dragging the Lord down with her. This truly accomplished the bloody wedding.
花间一壶酒，独酌无相亲。举杯邀明月，对影成三人。
The most brilliant part of the entire short film is this line of poetry. Unfortunately, the scenes used are rather incongruous. The upcoming episodes Smart Appliances, Incompetent Master, and The Other Large Thing come from the same writing team. They humorously critique their owners from the perspective of Smart Appliances. The first to appear was a multi-zone thermostat, owned by Brian and Cynthia. The couple had been arguing recently. The thermostat, caught in the middle, had been suffering greatly.
They want passive-aggressive? Just wait until it gets below freezing.
But her experience paled in comparison to that of the Dantison Smart Toothbrush. After all, nothing was sadder than a toothbrush facing an owner who didn't like to brush their teeth.
Even the dog nopes the hell out. And that thing licks buttholes. You have bacon in there from 1996.
Does this voice sound familiar? The voice of the toothbrush is provided by the famous stand-up comedian Shinsini. Speaking of unpleasant odors, the Smart Ionic Air Purifier had something to say. Could someone please tell its owner the air purifier's function was only to remove dust and particles from the air? It couldn't eliminate odors. This owner's farts were simply too many and too foul.
If he ever lights a candle in here, we are all going to die.
In the realm of odors, no one was more affected than the Royal Throne Smart Toilet.
The refrigerator just told me it's taco night and Brenda's making them extra spicy.
The Joyful Cat's self-cleaning litter box had no time to retort after hearing the toilet's words, because it was about to open its mouth to eat poop. As for the Griffin home security system, it just wanted to say one thing: how can anyone in this day and age use 1234 as a security code?
When she gets robbed, I'm just gonna ask if they'll take me with them.
Next up is the Horsley Rhythm Smart Showerhead. It has 6 adjustable pulse modes and a female owner who has been single for 4 years. So we won't go into detail about its troubles.
But I would prefer to keep it professional. I just want to be friends. Oh, okay.
An overly enthusiastic owner is a burden, but a too indifferent one is also a hassle. The Vela Smart Waffle Maker hadn't left the cabinet since it was manufactured. It was a gift from Ms. Mary to celebrate her 42-year-old son finally becoming independent. Unfortunately, this grown son only knew how to play video games. He had never made anything in this kitchen.
Oh my god. I'm gonna die a waffle virgin.
It's a very humorous, witty, and charming episode. The ending song is performed by the Smart Showerhead. The final episode of this season is titled The Stalker. In the St. Luke's Asylum in London, 1757, a cat named Geoffrey guarded a talented poet, ensuring that his soul wouldn't be taken by the Demon King. However, as night deepened, a large cloud of black smoke surged into the stone chamber. The devil transformed into an elegant gentleman and invited Geoffrey to take a walk with him. Geoffrey initially didn't want to agree, but couldn't resist when the devil promised delicious food. So, after hesitating, Geoffrey chose to follow him. He walked through the London night step by step toward the devil, showing no intention of bowing down. The devil also realized that Geoffrey was a tough cookie, so he snapped his fingers, summoning a feast of delicious food. As long as Geoffrey was willing to hand over the poet, he could have food that would last a lifetime. However, Geoffrey immediately refused. The poet was his beloved pet, and he could never offer him to the devil. Hearing this, the devil was willing to make a concession as long as the poet was willing to write a poem for him, creating exquisite verses. The the devil would wipe the slate clean of their past grievances. Unexpectedly, Jeffrey lunged and bit his finger. The devil, enraged, revealed his true form and chased Jeffrey into the church, biting his nape. The poet hurriedly begged for mercy. If the devil would release Jeffrey, he would create verses for him. The devil reached an agreement with the poet, saying he would return the next day to collect the finished work. Jeffrey found it impossible to win alone. So he went to seek help from the stray cats in the backyard. They were Miss Polly, Master Tom, and the Night Hunter doll. Jeffrey explained that the devil wanted to use the poem to take the poet's eternal soul and destroy everything. The cat warriors certainly wouldn't allow this to happen. They were the descendants of the angelic tigers that killed the Egyptian mongooses and were God's warriors, the only ones capable of hurting the devil. The Night Hunter doll pointed out that to defeat the devil, they must deny him what he desires. In short, they vowed to protect the poem at all costs. By the following night, Tom, Polly, and the Night Hunter doll launched their attack first. Meanwhile, Jeffrey took the opportunity to stealthily navigate through the gaps between worlds, while several little cats fought bravely to draw the Demon King's attention. Jeffrey quietly approached the poem he had targeted. Seeing that the three cat companions were about to give in, he suddenly appeared, lunging at the poet, snatching the poem and tearing it apart. Then the midnight bell tolled.
Now be gone, foul creature!
The devil was furious but had no choice but to leave. The story of this season ends here. A hot review on a certain platform succinctly summarized this season's content, that is, cats, religion, and aliens. The 10 episodes almost entirely revolved around these three themes. I must say that Season 4 is truly the most mediocre of the series. Episodes 8, 9, and 10 were somewhat interesting. Episode 7 was simply terrible. The awkward and affected tone of the Chinese dub, and the hodgepodge of elements mixed together, ended with a line from Levi's "Drinking Alone Under the Moon," was utterly baffling. It was simply nonsensical. The previous works, such as Zima Blue, The Witness, and Gigantica, brought shock and awe. This season, however, had no surprises at all. It seems that the depletion of imagination is indeed a problem faced by creators worldwide.